Hello and welcome to another episode of The Breeze in association with Films Gone Wild. And here we are today at the online Bentonville Film Festival, and we have a wonderful filmmaker here that made a documentary called The Donut King. So please introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us a bit about your film.
Hello, my name is Alice Gu. I directed a film called The Donut King. Thank you for the introduction, Alex. And The Donut King is a film about Ted Ngoy, a Cambodian refugee who arrived in America in 1975 and built an unlikely empire of independent donut shops and became a millionaire within 3 years of arriving here.
I saw the film this morning. I thought that it was a wonderful watch. It brought me to tears with how warm and amazing it reminded me of America, the American dream. I say that this film is like a perfect example of an American dream where Uncle Ted, as his family calls him, came to America from Cambodia penniless, without not knowing anybody, didn't even speak the language, and then was able to build a donut empire. I think that the film has a lot of swagger, was the first word that came to mind while I was watching it. I thought the editing was really tight, on point. The music selection that you had was very hip and cultural, and it just sort of really all came together well. So you not only directed it, but you shot it and you constructed it and produced it as well. So tell me a little bit how this all got started for you.
Well, it all got started. I found Ted Ngoy's story a little bit by accident, but it was through a happy accident of my nanny. I was a new mother at the time, and my husband had brought home these high-end expensive pastries, and we offered her, a gourmet donut, and she said, "Oh no, thank you. I only eat Cambodian donuts." And we're like, "These are like the best donuts on the west side of Los Angeles." And she says, No. I only eat Cambodian donuts." And this goes back and forth. And, one day she gets it. She's like, "Oh, I found a Cambodian donut shop and I brought you Cambodian donuts." And we said, "Great." And my husband and I, we bit into them and we said, "This is absolutely delicious, but isn't this just a glazed donut?" And she said, "No, but it's a Cambodian donut." And we're like, "Why? Why is it Cambodian?" And she says, "Because Cambodian people make it." And I said, "Well, if a Cambodian person makes an American donut, isn't it still an American donut?" She says, "No, it's a Cambodian donut." And we go back and forth. And I Google Cambodian donuts, Los Angeles, and all of these articles come up about Ted Ngoy. And just the headlines alone, I was captivated. Why your donut boxes are pink? Why are there no Dunkin' Donuts in California? From rags to riches, the Donut King. And I read through all the articles and I was absolutely fascinated, and I knew I had to tell the story.
Yeah, I think it was very informational or informative to me, at least, about the donut world. I never really thought about how it got started. I mean, I lived in California for 10 years, and I know that there are many donut places all over the place. But I learned the history of the donut on the West Coast. You have a lot of speakers like the Winchell's Donuts. They go back into like the 1960s and 70s when that was booming out here. The birth of the donut, the growth. You talk about how the East Coast has Dunkin' Donuts, and then the mom and pop, which is really the Cambodian population, which came here during the siege of Phenom Phen, and the horrible time with the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. So it was very educational as well to learn more about it. So it's way more than donuts. When you were putting together the documentary, how were you able to decide what amount of things you wanted to do with donuts and historical footage, so to say? Like, I really love that you had bits from President Ford and President Carter, and also some more footage. How were you putting together the doc in that aspect?
This was we knew that it was going to be a pretty big undertaking from the get-go. There's so much information. I mean, just Ted's story alone, and there's so much information. And then in doing the research and doing a deep dive into that, we find all of the political aspect of it, the history of donuts, American culture. I mean, now, in 2020, I'd say especially in Los Angeles, my God, who eats donuts? Everybody just drinks, cold pressed kale juice.
Yeah.
you know, everybody's so healthy in some sort of keto or paleo or some sort of diet. And, you know, going into a donut shop, they are as busy as ever.
Sure.
And going into the donut history, just thinking how we grew up and actually how foods changed, you know. So in the 70s, a very typical breakfast was 2 donuts and a cup of coffee. Like that was donut for most Americans, which is so hard. Like I don't know many people who eat that now. But I also really wanted to get into why his story was so significant. And as you said, like the siege on Phenom Phen and the genocide, you know, there were over 2 million Cambodians killed by the dictator at the time. And I don't think it's terribly easy or even tempting. You know, let's say you're, oh, what should we watch tonight? Oh, should we watch a movie on genocide? You know, it doesn't sound
appeasing, yeah, enticing. So something lighter, something more fun, maybe.
Exactly, but I knew that I had this balance of donuts, so I could actually like tell the story. Everybody loves donuts. 96% of Americans love donuts. You know, you love donuts, and then you can get into some heavy stuff, and then every time it gets a little too heavy, we can lift it back up. You know, before anybody's like, oh God, this is too heavy, I'm gonna turn it off, you can bring it back to donuts.
Yeah.
So I always had this tool that I could take the viewers on a ride. And it was important for me. This is an important story for me, and I really wanted to share it with as wide of an audience as possible. And again, given that 96% of Americans like donuts,
Yeah.
I thought I could do a little bit of a Trojan horse.
Yeah, I was not expecting to have a history, a walk down history rather, while I was watching the film. But then when it went into that whole section of his life, it showed how integral it was to how he became who he became. So you're looking at an icon of sorts for the Cambodian refugees and people that came to America that were sponsored by the Red Cross in order to be placed here to get away from essentially genocide in Cambodia for what was going on. And this man himself, who is the Donut King, Mr. Ngoy, Uncle Ted rather, gave so many people, almost like the entire population of Cambodia that came here, the donut world. And utilizing these people, his family, other friends, you know, when he just started building and building, it just really kept steamrolling. And why I say the film itself is the American dream is because the country was built on immigrants, refugees, people that came here looking for a better life. And he goes so many times into the film saying, wow, this is amazing, I built this. The guy had nothing, he came here with pennies, and then he just built like an empire, and then it just kept going and going, and like he was knocking out corporations with the hustle that he had. So that, you know, that's an inspiring documentary where you really want to, you know, get into it with your subject. And as you were saying, you know, it goes very deep with an entire community of people. But then we also talk about there are downsides for things that happen within a human's life, because people are human and they go through highs and lows. So when you were putting together the structure of it, did you want to have everything really going through the roof good, and then showing some humanity, and then kind of finishing off with where the future of donuts is going to go? Is that kind of the algorithm for the way you wanted to make the doc?
Yeah, Ted, I feel like why his story was so good and why it resonated so much with me is although, yes, he sponsored, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of Cambodian refugees to come here and give them a chance, a shot at the American dream themselves.
Yeah.
And getting rich in the process. That is super commendable, but he was far from a perfect man.
Right.
You know, he was very flawed. And you know, for me, you know, when someone's too much of a saint, it's like, oh, it's okay, all right, that guy's perfect, okay, like not relatable, you know. But when you see somebody's like, oh my God, this is so inspiring, this person's so great, and then they have a little downfall or hiccups, you're like, oh, that person's like me, you know, we're all human, we're all fallible, we can all trip up at the height of our success and potentially blow it all. And you know, without giving too much of the film away to your audience, you know, he almost did that. But there is a legacy that lives on that I thought was just really, really beautiful, and kind of comes full circle about telling the story about this complex an inspiring man.
Yes, which brings me to my conclusional question of saying the future of donuts. I think that this documentary really shows the birth and boom of donuts in California, and then as it continues to grow, and then we flash forward to today of where donuts are. It talks about the younger generation of if they're going to continue with donuts and where donuts are going. And as you were saying, people are switching to the kale smoothie lifestyle in California and globally. Where do you see the future of donuts going, and where would you see this project continuing on in the future for other viewers to see?
You know, I'd like to see, donuts aren't going anywhere. You know, as much as everybody's in a health food revolution, donuts aren't going anywhere, because healthy people, they still have a cheat day.
Yeah.
You know, when I was interviewing, they're like, who eats donuts? Like, everybody. The skinny girls, that's their cheat food.
Yeah.
The bodybuilders, that's their cheat food. And the donuts have also adapted. There are vegan donuts, there are paleo donuts, there are keto donuts, there are gluten-free donuts, there are donuts not made with refined sugar. I mean, for anything, there is a donut for everybody out there. And I feel like what could be more American than that, you know, is constant innovation and adaptability. And, you know, that's really, for me, the future of donuts. So donuts are definitely not going anywhere. They just keep getting better, and they'll keep adapting. And for the future of the film, we are scheduled to have a release this fall.
Nice.
To be announced where and when. But yeah, keep an eye out.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today. I thought The Donut King was awesome. Again, it's like the most swagger-filled documentary that I've seen. I really enjoyed the way that you have created the documentary, learning about the story. So it was informative, fun, educational, and hopeful. You know, it's light. It's something that people will really enjoy to watch, and then sort of ignite a good feeling about themselves. So it was a feel-good documentary. So
Thank you. And that was so important to me. I feel like this day and age, I feel like everybody could use some hope, a little kindness, a good story, and an inspirational story. You know, it's reach for the stars.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I really enjoyed it. So we're looking forward to showcasing this interview to our audiences, and thank you for creating and making The Donut King a wonderful documentary.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you.